The crack of his hand against my cheek echoed through Opulence Outfitters, a sound so sharp it froze the crowded store in Seattle's bustling Pike Place Market District. I, Lena Harper, stood rooted, my face stinging not from the slap but from the weight of dozens of ICE customers, employees, strangers watching me like I was a trespasser in my own domain. Gregory Vaughn, the store manager, loomed over me, his face twisted with a smug triumph that made my stomach churn. "Get out," he spat, his voice loud enough to carry over the murmurs. "This isn't some flea market for folks like you." The crowd's laughter, sharp and cruel, cut deeper than his hand, but I didn't flinch. At 50, with $3.5 billion and 950 stores to my name, I'd faced worse than this white man's prejudice. My worn cardigan and scuffed loafers weren't a disguise. They were a choice, a reminder of the Memphis streets where I'd learned to turn shame into strength. I was here to investigate whispers of discrimination, but now, with my phone secretly recording in my pocket, I was living it. As Gregory gestured for security to drag me out, I met his eyes, my heart pounding not with fear but with resolve. This wasn't just about MIT, it was about every soul who'd been judged unworthy for how they looked. I turned, my steps deliberate, and walked toward the door, knowing the real reckoning was yet to come. Hours earlier, I'd stepped into the store, my senses alert, my mission clear. I'd built Opulence Outfitters from a single shop into a retail empire, but I never forgot the girl who'd sewn her own dresses because store-bought ones were a luxury. Reports of bias at this Seattle location customers turned away. Employees pressured to profile had pulled me here for a surprise inspection. I wanted to see the truth, not the polished version managers fed corporate. My cardigan, frayed at the cuffs, and my loafers, patched from years of use, let me blend in, but they also carried my mother's voice. "Lena, your worth ain't in your clothes." I moved through the aisles, noting the pristine displays of $3,000 handbags and the way a young black couple hesitated at the door, as if expecting rejection. I was already thinking about my mentorship program where I taught kids from places like my old neighborhood to design clothes and dream big. Would this store, my store, welcome them? That's when Gregory spotted me, his charming smile masking a glint of disdain. Gregory Vaughn, 48, was all polished tailored suit, slicked back hair, a voice that dripped with false warmth. I'd read his file. A man who'd failed at 3 businesses before landing this job. His ambition fueled by a desperate need to prove he belonged among the elite. His eyes raked over my outfit, and I saw the judgment click into place. "Ma'am," he said, loud enough to draw attention. "Are you lost? There's a thrift shop near the Space Needle that might be more your speed." His tone was playful, but the jab was clear, a coded slight at my race, my clothes, my very presence. I felt a familiar ache, the kind that came from years of being told I didn't belong, but I smiled, calm as ever. "I'm right where I need to be," I said, my voice steady. I expected him to move on, but Gregory's smile tightened, like I'd challenged his authority. He stepped closer, and I saw heads turn, shoppers pausing, employees glancing up. This was no longer a private moment. It was a spectacle, and Gregory was ready to perform. I drifted to the jewelry counter, pretending to browse a $4,500 watch, but really watching the staff. Sarah Kim, a 27-year-old Korean-American sales associate, laughed nervously as she helped a white customer, her eyes darting to Gregory. Marcus Reed, a 32-year-old black security guard, stood by the door, his face unreadable but his posture tense. A white customer, Evelyn Ross, 62, with a pearl necklace and a haughty air, lingered nearby, her gaze sharp. Gregory followed me, his voice louder now, meant for the growing crowd. "That watch costs more than most folks rent, sweetheart. Maybe try the clearance rack at Target." Evelyn chuckled, her hand covering a smirk, and Sarah joined in. Though her laugh faltered, Marcus shifted, his eyes meeting mine for a split second, and I saw something flicker, shame, maybe, or conflict. I thought of my mentorship kids, how they'd beam when they sketched their first designs. Would they face this in my store? The thought tightened my chest, but I kept my face calm, my hand pressing the record button on my phone. Gregory's mockery grew bolder. "Look, folks," he called, gesturing to the crowd. "She thinks she can shop here." He pointed at my cardigan, the threads loose at the hem. "This isn't a charity shop. Our customers don't wear hand-me-downs." The laughter spread, and I felt the weight of their stares, not as a billionaire but as a woman who'd once been a girl told she'd never be enough. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Dear, there's a dollar store in Capitol Hill. You'd fit right in." Others chimed in, businessmen in suits, women with designer bags suggesting pawn shops, flea markets. Each jab a reminder of the world's quickness to judge. Sarah giggled, but her hands twisted nervously. Marcus looked away, his jaw tight. I saw a young Latina customer, Sophia, 25, in the crowd, her phone out, live streaming to social media. Her eyes were wide, torn between shock and complicity. I wanted to speak, to tell them who I was, but I held back, letting the recording capture every word. Every laugh. The humiliation escalated when I reached for a $6,000 dress in the VIP section. Gregory's eyes lit up, like he'd found his grand finale. Oh, now she's aiming high. That dress is a year's salary for some folks. He turned to the crowd, arms wide. This store is for winners, people with Teslas, not bus passes. Look at her wallet, Bet, it's falling apart. He demanded to see my purse, claiming store policy to check for theft. I handed it over, my hand steady, knowing the truth would outlast this moment. He held up my wallet, taped at the edges from years of use, and waved it like evidence. This is what delusion looks like. The crowd roared Sophia's live stream, capturing it all, Evelyn clapping like it was a show. I thought of my mother, shamed for her patched dresses, and my kids in the mentorship program, who deserved better than this. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. Gregory's voice rose, a preacher at a cruel pulpit. Our customers belong here. They don't scrape by, don't mend their clothes, don't dream above their station. You're an insult to this place. The crowd cheered, and I saw Sophia lower her phone, her face pale. Sarah's laughter stopped, her eyes on the floor. Marcus stepped forward, as if to intervene, but Gregory waved him back. Then came the slap, sudden and sharp. After I asked to speak to the manager. I'm the manager, he sneered, and you're nothing. The crowd gasped, then applauded, as if he'd defended their sacred space. I touched my cheek, not in defeat but in clarity. I walked out, their cheers at my back, and pulled out my phone. James, I said to my assistant, my voice calm but ironclad. Bring the team to Seattle now. As Gregory toasted his victory, inside, I stood in the cool air, knowing the facade he'd built was about to shatter. The sting on my cheek lingered, a hot pulse beneath my skin. But it was the roar of the crowd's laughter that burned deeper, echoing in my mind as I stood just outside Opulence Outfitters, my phone still recording the chaos I'd left behind. I, Lena Harper, a 50-year-old black woman who'd built a $3.5 billion empire, had been slapped and shamed in my own store, not for who I was but for how I looked. Worn cardigan, scuffed loafers, a taped-up wallet that Gregory Vaughan had waved, like a flag of my supposed unworthiness. I could still hear his voice through the glass doors, rallying the crowd like a ringmaster. Their cheers had twisted him to exclusion, but I wasn't broken. My heart beat with a fire forged in Memphis, where I'd watched my mother swallow similar insults with grace, teaching me that true power lies in patience, not rage. I'd walked out not in defeat but to strategize, to let Gregory and his audience dig their own graves, while my recording captured every cruel word. As I stood in the cool Seattle air, I thought of the kids in my mentorship program, the ones I'd promised a world where their dreams wouldn't be judged by their clothes or skin. This moment was for them too, and I wouldn't let it pass without change. Inside, the store had become a theater, and Gregory was center stage, his tailored suit gleaming under the lights as he fed off the crowd's energy. I'd seen it build earlier, the way his mockery of me had drawn them in, but now, as I glanced through the window, I saw it reach a fever pitch. He stood by the jewelry counter, where I'd admired a $4,500 watch, his arms wide as he addressed the growing throng of customers and employees. Folks, this is Opulence Outfitters, he declared, his voice booming with a charisma that masked his venom. We cater to winners, not wannabes. That woman thought she could play pretend, but we know who belongs here. The crowd erupted, clapping and nodding, their faces a mix of smug superiority and gleeful entertainment. Evelyn Ross, the pearl-clad customer who'd suggested I try a dollar store, clapped loudest, her eyes glinting with satisfaction, as if Gregory had defended her personal kingdom. I felt a pang, not for myself, but for the young black couple I'd seen earlier, who'd left the store before this began. Their heads bowed as if they'd sensed this hostility. How many others had faced this before me? Sarah Kim, the 27 sales associate, stood behind the counter, her nervous laughter now a full giggle, though her hands twisted a cloth napkin, betraying her unease. I saw her glance at Marcus Reed, the security guard, whose broad shoulders were stiff, his eyes fixed on the floor. Marcus, 32, had a presence that commanded respect, but I'd caught his hesitation earlier. The way he'd almost stepped forward when Gregory demanded my purse but stopped, bound by loyalty or fear of losing his job. I wondered what held him, back bills to pay, a family to support, or the weight of being the only black man in a room that cheered for my humiliation. Sophia, the young Latina customer, was still filming, her phone angled to catch Gregory's performance, her likely spreading this spectacle across social media. I imagined the hashtags #luxurylife, #keepitclassy turning my pain into viral content. But Sophia's face was conflicted, her lips pursed as if she knew this was wrong but feared the crowd's wrath if she stopped. I understood that fear. I'd felt it as a girl, watching my mother endure sneers in stores, knowing silence was safer than speaking. Yet silence hadn't built my empire, and it wouldn't save this store from itself. Gregory's voice grew sharper, his words a scalpel, slicing at my dignity. Look at this place, he said, gesturing to the gleaming displays of $3,000 handbags and silk scarves. Our customers don't count pennies. They don't wear patched-up clothes or carry wallets that scream bargain bin. They live the life she can only dream of. He pointed toward the door, where I'd exited, and the crowd laughed again, some pulling out their phones to snap photos of the empty spot, as if my absence was a trophy. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice syrupy with false pity. Poor thing, she must have seen our ads on Instagram and thought she could fake it. Try the flea market in Fremont. Her suggestion sparked a chorus of other spawn shops, thrift stores, even a charity boutique in Ballard. Each jab was a brick in the wall they built around their exclusivity, a wall I'd spent my life dismantling. I thought of my mentorship kids, sketching designs in our Seattle workshop, their eyes bright with hope. Would they face this cruelty if they walked in here? The thought tightened my chest, but I kept my focus, my phone capturing every second of this mob's cruelty. I remembered the moment Gregory had demanded my purse, claiming it was to check for theft. The crowd had gasped, thrilled by the accusation, and I'd handed it over, not because I had to, but because I knew the truth would outshine their lies. He'd rifled through it, pulling out my wallet taped "Yes, but mine," a relic of my journey. From poverty to power, this he'd crowed, holding it high. This is what happens when you aim too high. The laughter had been deafening, Sophia's live stream immortalizing it, Sarah's giggles piercing me like needles. Marcus had looked away, his fists clenched, and I'd wondered what stopped him. Was it Gregory's authority, or the fear of being the next target? Now, as Gregory continued his sermon, I saw him move to the dress section, where I'd touched a $6,000 gown. She actually thought she could try this on, he scoffed, lifting the dress like a prop. This is for our real customers, people who don't ride the bus, who don't mend their dreams with tape. The crowd roared, and I felt a surge of anger, not for the dress but for the principle that a piece of fabric could define someone's worth. Inside, the spectacle grew uglier. Gregory's charisma was a magnet, pulling the crowd deeper into his narrative. He paced the floor, his suit pristine, his voice a blend of mockery and conviction. Our customers, he said, park their BMWs out front. They wear diamonds. To brunch, not patches to work. They don't wander in here pretending they belong. He gestured to Evelyn, who nodded like a queen approving her night, and to a businessman in a $2,000 suit, who clapped with a grin. Sarah, emboldened, chimed in. Exactly. Mr. Vaughan knows how to keep this place special. Her voice was eager, desperate for his approval, and I saw her ambition, a young woman climbing a ladder she thought Gregory controlled. But her eyes flickered with doubt, as if part of her knew this was wrong. Marcus, still by the door, shifted his weight, his silence louder than the crowd's cheers. I wondered about his story. Had he faced this kind of prejudice himself, only to stand, by now, complicit by necessity? Sophia's livestream continued, her comment section likely exploding with reactions. Some cheering Gregory, others calling out the cruelty. I imagined my mentorship kids watching this video, their confidence shaken, and my resolve hardened. This store, my store, had to change. Gregory's performance reached a crescendo. This is our sanctuary, he declared, arms wide, as if embracing the entire store. A place where quality meets class, where we don't have to deal with impulse. As the word hung in the air, heavy with racial undertones, and I felt it like a slap all over again. The crowd applauded, some shouting "Well said," and "Keep it real." Evelyn added, "We need more managers like you, Gregory. Standards matter." Her words were a dagger, not just to me but to every person who'd ever been deemed less than for their skin or their bank account. I thought of my mother who'd sewn our clothes by hand, her fingers calloused but her spirit unbroken. She'd taught me to stand tall, to turn their scorn into fuel. I was doing that now, my phone a silent weapon, capturing this ugliness for the world to see. Sarah's laughter faded, her hand still twisting that napkin, and I saw a crack in her facade. Guilt, perhaps, or fear of what this moment might cost her. Marcus took a step forward, then stopped, his eyes meeting mine through the window for a fleeting moment. I saw something there, regret, maybe, or a spark of defiance. The crowd's suggestions grew more vicious, each one a performance of their own. A woman in a fur coat suggested I try the Salvation Army downtown. They've got clothes for people like her. A young man in a designer hoodie laughed. Bet she shops at garage sales. Their words weren't just about me. They were about upholding a hierarchy where wealth and whiteness were the gatekeepers. Sophia's phone trembled, her live stream still running, and I wondered what she'd do with this footage, posted for clout, or deleted in shame. Gregory fed off their energy, his eyes gleaming with power. "See, this is why we're the best," he said, clapping his hands. "Our customers get it. They know quality when they see it and when they don't." The applause was thunderous, and I felt the weight of their collective prejudice, a force that had crushed so many before me. But I wasn't crushed. I thought of my mentorship program, the kids who'd designed their first jackets last week, their laughter filling the workshop. They deserved a world where this store welcomed them, not shamed them. As Gregory basked in his triumph, I stood outside, my phone still recording, my mind racing with plans. I'd called James, my assistant, and he was on his way with the corporate team, legal, HR, security, the works. But this wasn't just about punishment, it was about transformation. I envisioned a town hall, a place to confront this ugliness head-on, to teach this store, this city, that dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right. Inside, Gregory's voice carried through the glass, promising standards and excellence, but I knew his victory was hollow. The air outside Opulence Outfitters was sharp, a Seattle breeze cutting through the haze of humiliation that clung to me like a second skin. I stood just beyond the glass doors, my cheeks still tingling from Gregory Vaughan's slap, my ears ringing with the crowd's cheers that had followed me out. I, Lena Harper, a 50-year-old black woman who'd built a $3.5 billion empire of 950 stores, had been reduced to a spectacle in my own store, my worn cardigan and scuffed loafers weaponized as proof I didn't belong. But I wasn't crumbling. My phone, still recording in my pocket, held the truth, every jeer, every mocking suggestion, every moment of Gregory's cruel performance, and I held the power to turn their victory into reckoning. Inside, I could see Gregory through the window, his tailored suit catching the light as he raised a glass of sparkling juice, toasting his triumph over the imposter he'd banished. The crowd's laughter was a knife, but I thought of my mother, who'd faced worse in Memphis shops, her head high despite the sneers, and of my mentorship kids, whose dreams I'd sworn to protect. This wasn't just my fight, it was theirs, and I was ready to wage it. I pulled out my phone, dialed James, my assistant, and spoke with a calm that belied the fire in my chest. James, bring the team to Seattle, legal, HR, security, everyone, and plan a town hall. This ends today. The memory of the store's final moments clung to me, vivid and raw. Gregory had pushed the confrontation to its peak, his charisma a venomous tide that swept the crowd. Long after waving my taped-up wallet like a trophy, he'd turned his scorn to my very presence, declaring me an insult to the store's sanctuary of class. The crowd, Evelyn Ross with her pearls, businessmen in suits, women with designer bags, had lapped it up, their suggestions of thrift stores and flea markets a chorus of exclusion. But it was when I'd asked to speak to the manager, giving him one last chance to de-escalate, that he'd snapped. "I'm the manager," he'd snarled, his face inches from mine. "And you're nothing." His hand had flown up, the slap a gunshot in the silent store, and for a moment, time stopped. Sarah Kim, the sales associate, had gasped, her hands frozen on the counter, her ambition to please Gregory warring with the shock in her eyes. Marcus Reed, the security guard, had lurched forward, his fists clenched, but halted, his loyalty to his job a chain holding him back. Sophia, the young Latina filming it all, had lowered her phone, her face pale, as if realizing the weight of what she'd broadcast. The crowd's applause had erupted a thunderous approval of Gregory's cruelty, and I'd walked out, not in shame but in strategy, knowing their celebration was built on sand. Now, standing outside, I watched Gregory play the hero. He stood by the dress section, holding up the $6,000 gown I'd touched, his voice carrying through the glass. "This is what we protect," he proclaimed, the crowd nodding like disciples. "A world where quality isn't a fantasy, it's our reality." Evelyn raised her glass, her smile smug, declaring, "You've saved this store's soul, Gregory." Sarah, her laughter gone, busied herself stacking receipts, her movements jerky, as if trying to erase her complicity. Marcus paced by the door, his eyes darting to the crowd, then to me, a storm brewing in his expression. I wondered about him, his silence, his hesitation. Was he thinking of his own experiences, the times he'd been judged for his skin? I'd seen his personnel file, a single father, working 2 jobs to support his daughter. That weight, that need to survive, could silence even the strongest conscience. But I saw something else in him, a spark of defiance, and I hoped it would ignite. Sophia was still inside, her phone now at her side. But I knew her live stream was spreading like wildfire. I imagined the comments pouring in, some cheering Gregory's to standards, others calling out the ugliness of it all. I thought of my mentorship program where kids like Sophia sketched designs that could one day hang in this store. Would they see this video and feel their dreams shrink? The thought was a fist around my heart, but it also sharpened my focus. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for a future where no one would face this. Gregory's backstory flickered in my mind, pieced together from his file and his actions. He'd failed at 3 businesses, each collapse a blow to his ego, leaving him desperate to prove he belonged among the elite. His charm was a mask, his cruelty a shield against the fear of falling back to the working-class life he'd clawed. Out of that insecurity drove him to target me, to make me the symbol of everything he despised: poverty, difference, defiance. But he'd miscalculated, and I was about to show him how. I pressed the phone to my ear, James's voice steady on the other end. "Lena, the team's on a jet, they'll be there in 2 hours. What's the plan?" I glanced at the store, where Gregory was now joking with a customer, his laughter a stark contrast to the pain he'd inflicted. "This isn't just about firing someone," I said, my voice low but firm. "It's about changing a culture. I want a town hall, employees, customers, community leaders. We're going to face this head-on, show what opulence really stands for." James paused, then asked, and the footage? I touched my pocket where the phone held every moment of Gregory's performance. It's our evidence, I said, but it's also our chance to teach. This video will spark a conversation, James, and we're going to lead it. I ended the call, my eyes fixed on the store, where the crowd's energy was shifting, some growing restless, as if sensing the hollowness of their victory. Inside, Gregory's celebration was a performance of its own. He moved to the center of the store, glass in hand, his voice dripping with mock sincerity. Let's raise a toast, he said, to keeping opulence a place where dreams meet reality and our delusions. The crowd cheered, but I saw cracks in their unity. Sarah's hands trembled as she poured more sparkling juice, her eyes avoiding the crowd, as if she could feel the weight of her earlier giggles. I thought of her file, a recent college grad, first in her family to climb the corporate ladder. Her ambition a double-edged sword that had led her to follow Gregory's lead. But ambition could be redirected, and I wondered if she'd find the courage to face her role in this. Marcus, still by the door, was no longer still. He paced, his gaze flickering to the crowd, then to the street where I stood. I remembered his daughter, pictured in his file, her smile bright in a school photo. Did he see her in me, in the kids who'd faced this store's judgment? His silence was a choice, but choices could change, and I held on to that hope. Sophia, meanwhile, was whispering to another customer, her phone now tucked away, but I knew the damage was done. Her livestream had gone viral, the clip of Gregory's slap likely trending across social media, sparking outrage and debate. I imagined my mentorship kids watching, their confidence shaken, but also the possibility of them seeing me stand tall, turning this moment into a lesson. I thought of a new idea, a social media campaign, #Dignity for All, to reclaim this narrative, to show that worth isn't measured by wealth or race. Gregory's voice cut through my thoughts, still audible through the glass. We've shown what that happens when you try to sneak into our world, he crowed. The crowd's applause weaker now, some faces uneasy. Evelyn, undeterred, called out, "You're a hero, Gregory. We need more like you." But her words felt forced, and I saw others shift, their glasses heavy in their hands, as if the sparkle of their celebration had dimmed. I stood taller, my resolve a steel thread through my core. Gregory's backstory made him human, not excusable. His failed businesses, his climb from a small-town life, had twisted into a need to gatekeep, to exclude anyone who reminded him of his past. I was that reminder, my blackness, my humble clothes, a mirror he couldn't face. But I wasn't here to destroy him. I was here to rebuild what he'd broken. The town hall would be more than a confrontation. It would be a mirror for this store, this city, to see their biases and choose better. I thought of Marcus, Sarah, Sophia, each caught in their own struggles, their choices shaping this moment. Marcus's daughter, Sarah's dreams, Sophia's platform, they were all part of this story, and I'd make sure they had a chance to rewrite it. The crowd's cheers faded, replaced by murmurs, as if they sensed a storm coming. I touched my cheek, the sting a reminder of why I fought. James and the team were on their way, and with them, the truth. Gregory's celebration was a house of cards, and I was ready to pull the first one. The Seattle dusk cast a soft glow over the street outside Opulence Outfitters, but inside, the air was thick with the false triumph of Gregory Vaughan's celebration. I, Lena Harper, stood just beyond the glass doors, my cheek still bearing for an echo of his slap, my heart steady with the weight of what was about to unfold. At 50, I'd built a $3.5 billion empire of 950 stores, but it was my roots in Memphis where my mother taught me to stand tall against scorn that anchored me now. I'd endured Gregory's mockery, the crowd's cruel applause, and the sting of being deemed unworthy in my own store. All because my worn cardigan and scuffed loafers didn't match their vision of wealth. My phone, now silent in my pocket, held the recording of every vicious word, every laugh, and I'd called my team to bring the truth into this gilded cage. As I watched Gregory raise another glass of sparkling juice, toasting his defensive standards, I felt not anger but clarity. This moment wasn't just about exposing him. It was about dismantling the prejudice that let this happen. For my mentorship kids, for every soul who'd been judged by their skin or their clothes, the hum of engines broke my thoughts. For black SUVs pulled up, and I knew the reckoning had arrived. Inside, Gregory was in his element, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the ugliness of his actions. He stood by the jewelry counter, joking, with Evelyn Ross, the pearl-clad customer who'd cheered his cruelty, her smile as smug as ever. Sarah Kim, the young sales associate, hovered nearby, her hands no longer trembling but her eyes downcast, as if she could sense the storm brewing. Marcus Reed, the security guard, stood by the door, his broad frame tense, his gaze flickering. Between Gregory and the street, Sophia, the Latina customer whose livestream had gone viral, was whispering to a friend, her phone tucked away but her face etched with unease. The crowd's energy had shifted, their laughter thinner, as if we felt the weight of their complicity. I thought of my call to James, my assistant, 2 hours ago, when I'd demanded the full corporate team, legal, HR, security, and a plan for a town hall to confront this store's culture. I'd also envisioned a social media campaign, #DignityForAll, to turn Sophia's video into a call for change. But now, as the SUV's doors opened, I focused on the present. My heart pounding with the promise of justice, the team stepped out, their presence commanding. Angela Brooks, HR Director, her face a mask of resolve. David Martinez, Head of Legal, clutching a tablet. Priya Sharma, her eyes scanning the store. And Jamal Reed, Security Chief, whose name I noted with a pang. Unrelated to Marcus, but a reminder of the stakes for men like him. Behind them came lawyers and executives, a force that signaled this was no ordinary visit. I walked toward them, my steps deliberate, and Angela met my gaze with a nod. "Lena, we're ready," she said, her voice low. I touched my phone, recording my sword, and led them to the entrance. Inside, Gregory noticed the group, his smile widening as he mistook them for VIP clients. He smoothed his tie and strode over, his voice dripping with charm. "Perfect timing," he said, gesturing to the crowd. "You've caught us at our best. I just handled a troublesome customer with utmost professionalism, kept our standards high. As always." Evelyn clapped, her pearls glinting, and called out, "He's a star. That woman didn't belong here, and he made sure of it." The crowd murmured agreement, but Sarah's shoulders hunched, and Marcus's eyes locked on me, a flicker of recognition in them. Angela's voice cut through the noise, calm but unyielding. "Mr. Vaughn, I'm Angela Brooks, HR Director. We're here to discuss your handling of a customer today." Gregory's confidence soared, his chest puffing out. "Of course, I protected our brand textbook management. That woman was all wrong for our clientele, and I ensured our real customers felt valued." He gestured to the sparkling juice glasses, the crowd's approving nods. "Look around, everyone's thrilled. This is what opulence is about." Priya stepped forward, her gaze sharp. "You're certain your actions reflect our values?" Gregory nodded, oblivious. "Absolutely. I've run this store for 10 years. I know what excellence looks like." I stood behind Angela, my presence unnoticed, my heart a drumbeat of anticipation. The crowd's chatter faded, their eyes curious but unconcerned, still basking in Gregory's glow. Sarah bit her lip, Marcus shifted, and Sophia's friend nudged her, whispering about the big shots who'd arrived. Angela's next words were a blade. "Mr. Vaughn, allow me to introduce Lena Harper, founder, CEO, and owner of Opulence Outfitters." I stepped forward, my cardigan unassuming but my eyes fierce, meeting Gregory's gaze. The store fell silent, a pin-drop hush that swallowed every breath. Gregory's smile froze, his face draining of color as he stammered, "That's impossible, she's her clothes." I spoke, my voice steady but resonant, cutting through his disbelief. "You judged me by my outfit, Gregory, not my worth. You decided I was nothing because I didn't look like your idea of wealth." I held up my phone, the recording paused but its weight palpable. "But I recorded everything, every word, every laugh, every moment. You and this crowd chose cruelty over decency." The silence shattered, replaced by gasps, murmurs, and the clink of glasses set down in haste. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her pearls suddenly heavy. Sarah's eyes widened, her face pale, and Marcus took a step forward, his expression a mix of shame and awe. Gregory's voice cracked, his charm crumbling. I didn't know. How could I? You looked like..." He trailed off, and I stepped closer, my words measured but piercing. "Like what?" "Someone who doesn't deserve respect. Someone whose skin, whose clothes, make them less human." The crowd shifted, some looking away, others whispering. Sophia's friend pulled her back, but Sophia stood frozen, her eyes locked. On me, I turned to the room, my voice rising. "For hours, you mocked me, shamed me, cheered my humiliation, all because you thought I didn't belong. But this is my store, and I built it to lift people up, not tear them down." Angela nodded, her tablet glowing with notes. "Mr. Vaughn, based on this incident and prior reports, your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Jamal Reed, the security chief, stepped forward, removing Gregory's badge with a swift motion. Gregory staggered, his face a mask of shock, his empire of control collapsing. "You can't." "I was protecting the brand," he sputtered. But Angela's glare silenced him. The consequences came swiftly. Sarah, her ambition no match for her complicity, was terminated, her eyes brimming with tears as she whispered, "I'm sorry, I followed him." I felt a pang. She was young, moldable, and I imagined a scholarship fund to help employees. Like her rebuild, a new idea sparking in my mind. Marcus was suspended, his role in standing by too grave to ignore, but I saw his clenched fists, his daughter's face in my mind, and hoped he'd find redemption. Evelyn and several customers, including the businessman who'd laughed loudest, were banned from all Opulence stores, their faces falling as David Martinez handed them notices. Evelyn stammered, "This is outrageous. I spend thousands here." But Priya's voice was cold. "Your money doesn't buy you the right to dehumanize." The crowd's unity fractured, some slipping toward the exits, others staring at the floor, their celebration now a nightmare. Marcus stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Miss Harper, I should have stopped it. I let my daughter down, let you down. His honesty hit me a crack in the wall of complicity, and I nodded, seeing a path for him to make amends. You'll have a chance to prove that, Marcus, I said, my voice softer but resolute. Sophia, still clutching her phone, approached, her eyes wet. I didn't know it'd go this far. My video, it's everywhere. I'm sorry. I touched her arm, seeing her potential. Use that platform, Sophia. Turn this into something good. The idea of #dignity for all burned brighter, a way to harness this moment for change. The store was a sea of stunned faces, the sparkling juice abandoned, the air heavy with regret. I addressed them all, my voice a beacon. This isn't about punishment, it's about accountability. You chose to judge me by my appearance, but you also chose to ignore your own humanity. We're going to rebuild this store, this community, to reflect dignity, not division. Outside, Sophia's video was exploding online, comments flooding in outrage, support, calls for boycotts, and praise for my stand. I saw a vision of the town hall, not just for the store but for Seattle, a place to face these biases head. I thought of my mentorship kids, who'd soon hear of this, and I wanted them to see not just the pain but the power of standing up. Gregory, escorted out by Jamal, looked back, his eyes hollow, his ambition shattered. I didn't hate him. I pitied the fear that had twisted him into this. Sarah, Marcus, Sophia, they were part of this story, too. Their choice is now a crossroads. The crowd dispersed, some apologizing, others silent, but I felt a shift, a crack in the facade they'd built. My cheek no longer stung, replaced by a fire to transform this moment into lasting change, to ensure no one else would face what I had. The team gathered around me, Angela's hand on my shoulder, and I knew the real work was just beginning. The air in Opulence Outfitters had shifted, no longer thick with the smug triumph of Gregory Vaughn's cruel spectacle, but alive with the quiet promise of change. Lena Harper stood in the heart of my store, a 50-year-old black woman whose $3.5 billion empire of 950 stores was built on the resilience of a Memphis girl who'd sown dreams from scraps. The sting of Gregory's slap, the crowd's mocking laughter, and the weight of their prejudice had tested me. But revealing my identity as the owner had turned their celebration into a reckoning. With Gregory fired, Sarah Kim terminated, Marcus Reed suspended, and Evelyn Ross banned, the store felt like a fresh page, ready for a story of dignity, not division. My team, Angela Brooks, David Martinez, Priya Sharma, Jamal Reed, stood by me, their support a steady anchor, but my heart was with the future. I thought of my mentorship kids, their bold designs pinned up in our Seattle workshop, and the #dignity for all campaign sparked by Sophia's viral video. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A chance to rebuild a community where no one would face the humiliation I had. As I planned the town hall to confront bias head-on, I felt a fire within me, not of vengeance but of purpose, a vow to make respect the foundation of my legacy. The days after the incident were a whirlwind of action, each step a brick in a new path. I scheduled the town hall at a Seattle community center near Pike Place Market, inviting Opulence staff, customers, local leaders, and my mentorship kids, their sketchbooks brimming with hope. This wasn't just a corporate response. It was a movement, a space to name prejudice and rewrite the rules. Sophia's video, now viewed millions of times, had turned my pain into a global conversation. Its comments a mix of outrage and solidarity. I launched #dignity for all on Opulence's social media. Posting worth isn't in your wallet or your skin, it's in your choices. Join us to build a retail world that lifts everyone. The response was a tidal wave. Thousands shared stories of being profiled in stores, their voices echoing my mother's long-ago humiliations in Memphis shops. I saw her in my mind, her hand steady as she sewed our clothes, her spirit unbroken despite the world's scorn, and I knew she'd be cheering this fight from somewhere beyond. I met with Marcus Reed, whose apology after my reveal had struck a chord. In a quiet office, his broad frame seemed smaller, his eyes heavy with regret. "Ms. Harper, I stood by while you were hurt," he said, his voice rough. "I thought of my daughter needing this job, but that's no excuse." I saw his daughter's smile from his file, bright and trusting, and leaned forward. "Marcus, you can show her what it means to stand up, help us rebuild." He nodded, tears falling, and I named him a store ambassador, tasked with leading inclusion workshops alongside my mentorship kids. His story, single father, juggling 2 jobs, silenced by survival, mirrored so many, but his courage now was a spark I believed would grow. I envisioned him teaching kids like his daughter to walk into any store with pride, their heads high, their dreams untouched by bias. Sarah Kim's firing weighed on me, her tearful "I'm sorry" a reminder of youth's vulnerability. She'd followed Gregory's lead, her giggles fueling his cruelty, but I saw a young woman shaped by pressure, not malice. I created a scholarship fund for employees like her, offering education and training to rebuild their futures. I pictured Sarah volunteering in our mentorship program, her ambition redirected toward inclusion, her guilt a stepping stone to growth. The fund, announced on social media, drew donations from customers moved by #dignity for all. Their support a sign that change was spreading beyond Seattle. Sophia, the young Latina whose live stream had sparked this storm, emailed me, her words raw. "I didn't know it hurt so much. I want to make it right." I invited her to the town hall, urging her to use her platform for good, and she agreed, her voice steady with purpose. I saw her potential, a voice for a generation, turning a mistake into a mission. The town hall was a revelation. The community center alive with hundreds of employees, customers, mentors, and my kids. Their designs clutched like treasures. I stood at the podium, my cardigan swapped for a blazer, not to conform but to mark a new chapter. I was told I didn't belong in my own store. I said, my voice clear, because of my clothes, my skin. But dignity isn't bought, it's chosen. The room listened, some eyes wet, others fierce with resolve. I shared my story, weaving in my mother's struggles, the pain of being judged, the strength it took to stand tall. I invited others to speak, and they did. A black cashier who'd been passed over for promotions, a Native American customer ignored at checkout, a white shopper who'd stayed silent and now vowed to do better. Marcus took the mic, his voice raw, admitting his silence but promising to teach his daughter courage. Sophia spoke, her words bold, launching a hashtag Dignity for All challenge to share stories of inclusion, her followers already joining in. My kids stood, their designs projected vibrant patterns celebrating their heritage, a defiance of prejudice that moved the room to tears. I unveiled new policies, mandatory diversity training, a customer respect protocol, and an employer-led diversity council. With Marcus as a founding member, I expanded our mentorship program, partnering with Seattle schools to offer design classes for marginalized youth, ensuring they'd never face the judgment I had. The applause was warm, a contrast to the cruel cheers of days before, a sign of a community ready to heal. I thought of Gregory Vaughan, a shadow now, his termination a necessity but not the story's heart. His fear of falling back to his small-town roots had fueled his cruelty. But I focused on those who stayed. Marcus, Sophia, even the businessman who'd laughed but now funded our scholarship. Their shame was a bridge to change, and I welcomed it. The hashtag Dignity for All campaign grew, trending across the U.S., with opulent stores hosting inclusion workshops, customers sharing videos of kindness. I launched a national initiative, training retail workers on anti-bias practices, a legacy I hoped would endure. As the town hall ended, I stood among my mentorship kids, their designs a testament to dreams unbound by prejudice. I reflected on my journey from a girl in patched clothes to a woman who'd turned a moment of pain into a movement. I'd learned that resilience isn't just enduring, it's using pain as fuel to build something better. I'd learned that power isn't in wealth but in choices to stand, to speak, to lift others. Most of all, I'd learned that change starts with one voice, one moment, one refusal to accept the unacceptable. I looked at the crowd, at Marcus's determined nod, Sophia's streaming phone, the kids' bright eyes, and felt my mother's spirit beside me, whispering, "You did it, Lena." I ask you, reader, if you faced a moment like mine, racial and gender discrimination, abuse of authority, how would you approach it to achieve the best outcome? Would you find the strength to stand, to speak, to turn pain into progress, as we did here?